The Chinese Coast Guard intercepted 4 boats from the Philippines on a resupply mission on Saturday, blocking the ship's paths and firing water cannons in an incident Manila called excessive and offensive. The boats were on a resupply mission to the Second Thomas Shoal, carrying food, water, and other supplies for Marines stationed there before they were intercepted by the Chinese vessels. The National Security Council spokesperson for the Philippines said the vessels were subjected to repeated water cannoning and continuous dangerous maneuvers. At one point, a Chinese vessel blocked a boat only 20 yards away, nearly causing a collision. The Second Thomas Shoal is an area inside the Philippines' exclusive economic zone that China claims for itself. The shoal hosts a Second World War ship where a number of Philippine soldiers are based and was grounded there by Manila in 1999 as part of an attempt to reinforce its claims to the territory. Footage released by the Philippine Coast Guard shows the Chinese ships blocking the smaller Philippine boats and firing water cannon on them. Philippine officials said one of the boats was unable to conduct its resupply mission, but both of the supply boats are now safely back in port. China has claimed its actions were a necessary and proportionate response to the Philippines illegally entering its waters and violating its sovereignty. A Chinese Coast Guard spokesperson said, in order to avoid direct blocking and collisions when repeated warnings were ineffective, water cannons were used to warn. China has since reiterated its demand for the Philippines to remove its ship located on the shoal, claiming that an agreement was previously made for them to do so. The president of the Philippines, however, responded by stating that he was not aware of any such agreement and that if an agreement exists, he rescinds it immediately. As a result of the attempted blockade by China, only half of the supplies were delivered, meaning another supply delivery must be made. An armed forces spokesperson for the Philippines said this would have to be done in the next 2 weeks. The dispute centers on China's claims to a large swathe of the South China Sea, which China maintains is almost entirely its own, despite much of the area being hundreds of miles from its own territory and inside the internationally recognized exclusive economic zones of Brunei, Taiwan, Indonesia, Malaysia, the Philippines, and Vietnam. And while The Hague ruled in 2016 that China does not have any legal claim to these areas, China has continued to harass other countries' vessels and maintain its claims of ownership. Last month, Vietnam demanded Chinese vessels leave its exclusive economic zone after a survey vessel and fishing boats were found to have illegally entered. There has been widespread criticism by the international community for China's actions. Australia and Germany called the Chinese behavior dangerous and destabilizing, while Japan's ambassador said the harassment was totally unacceptable. The Canadian embassy stated that Canada unreservedly condemns the dangerous and provocative actions taken by the Chinese Coast Guard. And the US Department of Defense reminded China of its defense treaty with the Philippines. The US reaffirms an armed attack on Philippine public vessels, aircraft, and armed forces, including those of its Coast Guard in the South China Sea, would invoke US mutual defense commitments. The US and Philippines have been making plans to conduct joint patrols in the South China Sea, and reports suggest Australia and Japan may also participate. This is likely to further inflame tensions between the US and China, with relations already fraught after the Chinese surveillance balloon incident and a number of interceptions of US Navy vessels and aircraft by the Chinese PLA, as well as ongoing economic sanctions that prevent the export of high-end chips to China. The region will see a strong Western military presence in the coming days, with the Malabar naval exercises taking place from the 11th to the 21st of August, bringing the US, Australian, Indian, and Japanese militaries together.